My name's Andy Holmes, and this is my short story, The Telepath.
Telepathy is a tricky thing. Everyone seems to have a pinch of it. People finish each other's sentences, pictures flutter into the mind, and those next to us start talking about our thoughts without us ever uttering a word. Were those thoughts broadcasted, or were they received like a mental text message? Evie Marner woke up at 3:04 in the morning. She was floating through the dreamscape when bright lights lit up her mind. Her husband was dead to the world, snoring on his stomach. Evie looked to the corner of their bedroom at the bassinet. Baby Lisa was 6 months old, and like her father, she was dead to the world. The dog lay on the floor at the foot of the bed, and everything seemed still, but she couldn't shake the feeling that the light switch in her mind flipped on for a reason. Something had woken her purposefully. She rubbed the sleep out of her eyes and walked over to the bedroom window. Their room was on the second floor, and from the window, she could see down into their backyard, as well as the neighbors. A stray cat crept along the fence, setting off the motion detector, and a floodlight perched on her neighbor's roof activated. The light erased the inky dark, and Evie saw her neighbor standing in the middle of his yard. He was wearing nothing but a pair of red boxers. He was spraying a mound of dirt with a garden hose. Evie's mind lit up again in a painful yellow. The light faded, and she saw the grim image of lifeless fingers being covered up with soil. She stepped back from the window and rubbed her temples. A voice that wasn't her own boomed in her skull. "You're worm food now, darling." The baby started to cry. It was a soft, muffled fuss, the kind fathers slept through, but woke mothers up in the early hours of the morning. Evie cradled the baby and laid down on the bed next to her husband. He rolled over and mumbled without opening his eyes. "Lisa's crying." "No shit, Sherlock," she thought. Evie nursed the baby back to sleep. Exhaustion coiled around Evie's mind and pushed her back towards the dreamscape. Unless she got up now and put Lisa back into her crib, sleep would overtake her, and she'd suffer the night with tiny knees and elbows jabbing her in the back. She fought the wall of exhaustion eating at her consciousness, and laid Lisa back in her crib. Before going back to bed, she looked outside. The neighbor was gone, the lights were off. These sleepless nights are starting to get to me, she thought. Evie crawled back into bed and wiggled her butt against her husband. As they touched, the light in her mind fired up again, and this time, she saw him with a woman. The woman's back was turned. She was standing in the moonlight on a balcony overlooking the ocean. Naked, save for a bedsheet loosely draped around her bare shoulders. Her husband embraced the woman, kissed her neck, and whispered, "I don't have to be at work until Wednesday." Evie squeezed her eyes shut and told herself that Daniel would never cheat on her. She was just tired, and her hormones were still firing off at light speed. The next morning, Evie juggled a crying Lisa while frying a pan full of eggs and bacon. Her husband stumbled down the stairs, messing with his tie. "Boss emailed me this morning," he said. "He wants me to go with him to Texas for a sales conference. I won't be home until Wednesday. Think your mom can come over and help out with the baby while I'm gone?" Evie's hand shook. She knocked the frying pan over, and eggs splat across the kitchen floor. Daniel grabbed some paper towels. As he wiped up the mess, she stared at the back of his head, and a thought broadcasted out of his mind into hers. "I wonder if she suspects anything." Daniel kissed her on the cheek and rushed out the door to work. The grocery store buzzed. Lisa dozed in the stroller. Evie leaned over the handlebars of the shopping cart and stared at the fridge full of milk cartons. Her eyes glossed over the labels as her mind wandered to her husband. On their 1-year wedding anniversary, he surprised her with jewelry and roses. When the pregnancy test came back positive, he wept and spent the next 3 hours poring through baby books, coming up with the perfect name. But the last few months had been tough. The sleepless nights had been trying, and their romantic life had dwindled down to the occasional half an hour of Netflix and popcorn that ended in both of them turning in the moment Lisa fell asleep. "Excuse me," a man stood behind her. "Oh, I'm sorry." Evie stepped aside so the man could get to the milk. As he opened the door, she peered into his blue eyes, and the lights flared up in her mind. She saw a small puppy rolling around in the bed as the man slept. The puppy squatted and pooped on the empty pillow next to him. "How old's your little one?" he asked, closing the refrigerator door. 6 months. Her name is Lisa." "Welcome to the world, Lisa. Life is precious, isn't it?" Yes, it is. You know, if your puppy needs potty training, we had a lot of success with our dog at Petco's puppy school. It's only $150 for 5 classes." The man's brow furrowed. "I didn't mention anything to you about a dog." "Oh," Evie smiled awkwardly. "I thought you mentioned a puppy. Sorry, I haven't been sleeping much. This little one's been keeping me up all night." "Right." The man hurried down the aisle and disappeared around the corner. Evie rushed to the bakery. She spotted another woman with a stroller picking up some fruit. A baby boy, no older than a few months, squeaked up at her. Evie scooted beside the new mother and stared at her forehead. The woman's mind peeled open like a banana, and Evie picked the boy's name out like a splinter. "Your baby boy is adorable," Evie said. The woman smiled at her. "Thank you. What's your little one's name?" "Lisa. And yours?" Evie gulped. She prayed she was wrong. Daniel couldn't be seeing another woman. "His name is Billy." Evie bit her lower lip and fought back the tears. "My husband," she thought. "Have I lost him?" Evie's hands shook as she struggled to slide the keys into the front door. The baby was crying and her hands were shaking. She barely remembered the drive home. Muscle memory turned the wheel as her mind whirred around Daniel. "Hey, Evie." Her girlfriend Anne was walking her dog on the sidewalk. She waved back and smiled. "We still on for the 15th? I'm sure you could use the night out away from the little one." Anne's mind poured out across the front lawn into Evie's skull. Anne was cheating on her husband with the pool boy. "Does your husband know about Ricardo?" Anne's face flushed white. The keys found their way home. Evie closed the door behind her. She walked up to the bedroom and laid Lisa in the crib. Then she collapsed on the bed, sobbing. She left the groceries in the trunk of her car, but she couldn't find the strength to get up. She sobbed until the tears stopped, and then sobbed some more. Daniel came home around 10. Dinner had gotten cold. She waited for him in the bedroom. He entered and tossed his blazer aside, leaned over the crib, and kissed Lisa on the forehead. "You don't touch her," Evie seethed. "What's wrong?" His presence made her skin crawl. 29 hours of labor, never sleeping, nipples sucked raw, stretch marks and hormones like a fireworks show, and this bastard was planning a weekend with another woman. "Boss kept me at work late. I'm sorry I missed dinner." He sat down next to her. "I know I dropped a bomb on you about going out of town this weekend, but you don't have any plans, right?" Evie slapped him. Daniel rose and rubbed his face. "What the hell, Evie?" "I know." "You know what?" "About her." Evie balled her fists and started to hit him repeatedly. Rage boiled inside her chest, and this man was going to feel what she felt. She was going to burn him alive. "Evie, stop." Daniel grabbed her wrist and pushed her back down onto the bed. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "You bastard." Evie thought her eyes were dried up from all the crying she'd done earlier, but the tears came anyway. "You're planning a trip with her this weekend. I know you don't have to work. You're going away to have an affair." Daniel started to laugh. "Baby, is that what you think?" He got up and walked over to his discarded coat. He reached into the pocket and handed her a brochure for a beachside resort and weekend getaway package. "It was supposed to be a surprise. Your mother will be here on Friday to take the baby, and you and me, we're blowing this joint." Evie gripped her husband's hands, and her heart raced. "Look at me. I'm telling the truth," Daniel said. "You're the only girl for me." She looked up into his eyes. Yellow lights flickered on inside her mind. The woman on the balcony turned. The moonlight lit her face, and her husband cupped her chin and kissed Evie on the lips. He was telling the truth. Evie broke down and cried so hard her shoulders bounced like twin jackhammers. There was no affair, just a fragmented, broken thought she picked up. Daniel sat down next to her and hugged her. "I take it you believe me?" Evie wiped her tears away. "Daniel, there's something I need to tell you." "What is it?" "I think the neighbor murdered his wife."
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that. Make sure you like and subscribe and check back soon for my next story. And if you want, head on over to www.andywrightstories.com to check out more of my work. I'll see you next time.